The NFL draft is 1 week away, and I'm excited. Here's my first round mock draft. While I wait, I decided to take a deeper look at the NFL draft within Madden 24's franchise mode. Recently I made a video on the overall presentation of Madden 24, going over what I felt was wrong with it and how I would improve it. During that video, I lightly touched on the NFL draft in Madden, but I didn't go very in depth. That's what this video is for. On the surface, Madden's draft seems fine. You can pick players, review trade offers, view a preview of what they look like, along with some attributes in either a normal or hidden dev trait, and that's it. It's pretty standard. However, the more I've been dissecting and reviewing how Madden 24 runs the draft in franchise mode, the more flaws I've started to notice within it. And when compared to older football games, well, I think you can tell where this is going. This video is going to cover everything I can think of that needs fixed in this mode. Let's begin. First, let me simply show you how the draft works in Madden 24. You can skip ahead to the next user pick, the next pick, or the end of the draft. The on-screen presentation shows an outdoor draft stage with a podium and fans standing around it. No commissioner ever goes to this podium, nor do players, and the fans don't have any sort of reaction to picks. When a player is picked by a team that you are not controlling, you get to see his face behind the draft stage on a screen along with his name and position. This has all been roughly the same design since Madden 19. Let's talk about the overall presentation first. The first change I'd make here is to bring back the bottom ticker. I swear it used to be there in Madden's from a few years ago, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't feel like booting up Madden 19 to check. In 24 though, there is no ticker. This would scroll through all the picks from each round, allowing you to see who was taken during the draft. Currently, the only way to see who was taken with previous picks is to go to the draft recap screen and switch to viewing the whole NFL after the draft. Why are previous picks not available to see during the draft? You can't even access who you have drafted mid-draft, so if you forget what position you took in the first round, too bad, you're gonna have to wait until after the draft to find out. Contrast this to ESPN NFL 2K5, where you could view the draft summary and sort by round mid-draft. Quickly and immediately navigate over and check your roster, then compare your players to the draft pool, then view suggested picks if you can't decide what to do, all without having to back out of the draft. In Madden 24, to even view your depth chart, you have to wait for the game to load into another menu, which takes longer than it should. There is no suggested picks section, and as I previously mentioned, there is no way to view a draft summary or even who you have picked until after the draft within a separate menu. Speaking of NFL 2K5, check this out. NFL 2K5 actually had a pre-draft and post-draft show with Mel Kiper Jr. going over prospects he thinks are going to be steals, the player he thinks is going to be the first overall pick, and then in the recap he goes over which team had the best draft, what was the most underrated pick, and things like that. It's absolutely mind-blowing to see in a game from 2004, which is now 20 years old. 2K5 is not overrated. It's the GOAT. I really wanted to show you guys these full clips with audio, but unfortunately ESPN is copyright claiming the music in the background. What's crazy though is despite all of this, I don't think 2K5's draft is good enough, at least for a new modern game. If EA copied over 2K5's draft exactly as it is, even with the pre-draft and post-draft show, it would still be an outdated 20-year-old draft system. I think what needs copied from it is the ability to navigate between the draft pool, the draft summary or recap so far, and your team's roster, all within the same area without needing to back out or load into a new menu. It should be instantaneous. I'd also add a trading section here. All of your tools should be right in front of you for such an important part of building your team. The pre- and post-game show would be nice as well if EA could incorporate the SportsCenter weekly wrap-up for the whole season too. It's been 20 years since 2K5, however, and EA hasn't even tried to do that yet outside of the extra point show in Madden 10 and 11. Assuming we actually want to innovate rather than match what's already been done, I have some ideas on how to take what 2K5 did and make it modernized and even better. First, add the ESPN chime. Yeah, that one. Wouldn't that add a lot to the vibe? I also think the crowd should react to picks. A huge part of the NFL draft on TV is seeing how fans react to a pick. I want to hear boos when there's a reach, or cheers after a steal or unexpected pick, or mostly silence during later rounds when no one cares. PS2 Maddens, such as Madden 07 here, had this feature.
Now on the clock.
I think having players walk up to the stage and hold up their jersey is probably unrealistic for EA, especially considering that usually only happens in the first round, but I do think there should be a Roger Goodell model standing at the podium, and his voice should be the one saying, "The Atlanta Falcons are now on the clock." The game currently has a voice saying that after each pick, but it's just some random guy. Make it more official and use the commissioner. Also, for user picks, have him say, "With the 6th overall pick, the New York Giants select," and then show the player card with silence or a crowd reaction. It's not necessary or realistic to have Goodell record every possible first and last name for picks, but he can totally record the lead-up line and have the game simply show you the player visually, replacing their name being spoken audibly. Start the draft with him walking up to the podium and saying, "The 2024 draft is now officially open. The insert team name are now on the clock," and have him record that line for the next 30 seasons, 2025, 2026, etc., since Madden's franchise mode only goes 30 years anyways. When you watch the NFL draft on TV, you get a lot more information on the screen than we see in Madden 24. When a player is taken, you usually get a full screen overlay showing his pro comparison, his strengths, his weaknesses, things like that. Since EA has that information already available in scouting besides player comparisons, I think this can easily be done with a redesign to the whole experience. Before a team picks while they are on the clock, it should show their needs, who they lost in the offseason, who they signed or traded for, and their record from last season and how their season ended, whether that's missed the playoffs, lost in the divisional round, won the Super Bowl, etc. After a team's first pick, this screen should also show who that team has drafted so far this year as well. All this information on screen would add so much to the narrative of the league, and you'd probably actually remember what team took what player and follow careers of guys not on your team. A small suggestion I have is not removing favorites from your draft board, but instead graying them out. As it stands, you can create a custom draft board by favoriting prospects and moving them up or down the board, but during the draft, once one of these guys is taken, they vanish. And because there is no draft recap until after the draft, you probably won't even know where the guy you liked went. If their name stayed on the board but was grayed out so you couldn't select them, and it also said drafted by X team, that would be much better in my opinion. News after the draft needs work as well. 2K5 had the post-draft show, which was really cool. Currently, you'll just see some tweets over on the news tab after the draft, but they lack context. When Charles Davis tweets, "Way to shake up that pick, Tennessee," how am I supposed to know what pick he's referring to? At the very least, just make it make sense. Maybe use the mock draft system to show the draft results and give grades for each team or something. The draft recap should be available during the draft, and after the draft ends, there should be something with a bit more depth to it. I also think there should be multiple draft stages, some indoor and some outdoor. In real life, the NFL has the draft in different locations depending on the year. Madden should mix it up like that too. Even if there are only 4 different versions, for example, that rotate. Just one generic draft stage, the same one for 5 years, isn't going to cut it. The news tab could have tweets announcing where next year's draft will be held, for example. There should also be a draft history section, where you can go and view every pick from every draft over the years at any time, just like you can for Super Bowl history. As it stands, after you advance a week after the draft, the recap is gone, and the only possible way to see where a player was taken is to go to that individual player, navigate deep into their player card, and then go to award history. It should be way easier to track. Now let's talk about the draft logic. The CPU needs to trade with itself. In Madden 24, the only trades that happen on draft day are ones the users make. CPU teams do not trade with each other. What should happen is that if a team has a need and a player at that need is falling more than expected, they should be inclined to trade up with a CPU team to go get their guy. Drake May should not last until the 3rd round, for example. If a guy like him falls, a team should trade up and get him before the end of the 1st. Go look at any NFL draft throughout history, and they all are always full of trades. The CPU needs better logic as well. Why would the Cardinals take an offensive lineman in the 1st, and then a quarterback like Michael Penix? They still have Kyler, and now Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch are their top 2 receivers. I can sort of understand them passing on a receiver in the 1st, but in the 2nd, they should have taken one. there is no reason the Cardinals should take Michael Penix. Madden could be used as an interactive mock drafting tool, one that lets you simulate player careers after, which could be very valuable if it wasn't so broken. I'm glad we have custom draft classes available to download, but it almost doesn't matter if teams don't make normal and reasonable decisions. When Marvin Harrison goes to the Bears, who don't have a quarterback anymore, it ruins the entire mock draft. So while CPU draft AI and logic needs to be fixed, and it's pretty much always been like this, a workaround is to give commissioners the ability to remove a pick or manually set a pick. I'd like to force Caleb Williams to the Bears if I could, but I can't. More commissioner tools could include sliders for positional value, randomness, AI trade frequency, aggressiveness, public versus team consensus, and more. When you use Pro Football Focus's mock draft tool online, it has settings like this. Madden should too. Similar to NBA 2K, there should also be a downloadable user scenarios section within franchise. For example, someone could manually set every NFL free agency move, get all the contracts right, and then import the 2024 draft class, and then save the scenario right before the start of the NFL draft. So any user could download that scenario and jump right into the draft for a new franchise with accurate team rosters. If 2K can do it, so can EA. Maybe in the future, 5 to 10 years from now, a ChatGPT type of AI could be used for CPU team logic, so there could be 32 different AI GMs running each team and making actual good decisions based on the team's actual needs. I know a lot of people hear AI and start freaking out, but I think it could be really useful in cases like this, without anyone having to lose their job over it. It can help developers, not replace them. Maybe my view is too optimistic though, and I do understand concerns surrounding AI. Anyways, there should also be compensatory picks. These are picks given to teams who lose players in free agency. If you lose a star player and don't sign anyone in return, you should get a late second or third round comp pick. This is an important part of the GM decision-making process, but in Madden right now, if you lose a guy in free agency, he's gone for nothing. Comp picks would help make decision-making more realistic, and also make you less likely to trade a guy on the final year of their contract, because right now that's basically the only way to get value for losing that player. Player faces need to be a lot more varied. In my league with a friend that's currently in the year 2040, there are around 5 faces for the top 50 players in the NFL. Why is it so hard for EA to generate a bunch of random faces and make them all slightly different? And what's weird is that when I manually edit a draft class, there are a lot more faces to choose from, but the auto-generated classes seem to only use a few of these over and over. It kills the immersion when every quarterback has the same stupid face. Naming players could be better too. Don't censor a player's name, especially if their name is already in the NFL. For example, Fletcher Cox exists in Madden, but when you create a prospect with the last name Cox, it gets censored, and this player gets to have asterisks for his last name instead because EA thinks we're trying to be funny. Listen EA, no one cares. If I want to name my player Ballsack McGee, let me, goddammit. And if a name exists already in the game, let us use it. It's way too strict, and while I understand EA needs to maintain an E rating for online play, I don't think COX needs to be censored. COCKS? Sure, but not COX. When a player is drafted, you get to see them posing in your team's uniform. I actually like this a lot, but it has a problem. The jersey numbers. It's just random or based on their preset college number. It doesn't account for the numbers available on your team, so it'll show a guy with one number and then after the draft they will have a different one. Just make it so the player preview shows his actual number, accounting for numbers already being used by players on your team. Retired numbers, or numbers of recently retired greats, should not be given to rookies. Seeing Drake May wearing Eli Manning's number 10 is really unrealistic. Again, if NBA 2K can do it because they have retired numbers, so can EA. Player equipment should be more randomized and more realistic too. Players in real life are drippy. They wear arm sleeves, visors, face paint, some have undershirts, some have turf tape. All of these equipment options exist in Madden 24, but auto-generated rookies always have the same generic lack of drip, usually gloves and a wristband. That's basically the case for every single generated player. Why not copy how real NFL players are in the game and randomly assign those same styles to the rookies. Instead, I usually have to go and edit my rookies' equipment just to make them look like real NFL players. Rookies should randomly have tattoos as well. OBJ has tattoos in Madden, but apparently tattoos became illegal starting in 2024 because every single player entering the NFL does not have tattoos. That's basically all I can think of. I don't think I've seen a video like this on YouTube really going over all of these issues, so I felt like I should do it. With the real NFL draft 1 week away, I figured it was relevant. Once again, here's my mock draft, and feel free to comment on it down below. Also let me know what you would want to change about Madden's draft to make it better. Thanks for watching.
I feel like Christian Will when I'm behind the wheel, driving like I stole it, bitch, I did. I feel just like up driving that pickup truck, and got a name we pray. Christian Will, will you please come for me?